when the movies began in the West, how did the movies draw inspiration as to who are going to be their characters, who is going to be the heroes, the heroines, the bad guys? They took from the theater. And that's why you'll see that in the beginning in Hollywood, a lot of the movies were dance and song oriented. You had the likes of, just to jump a bit from there, from the silent era. In the silent era as well, I mean, you know, you had no dialogue. I mean, how were you going to get the nuances of a scene across? You danced and you sang and you tap danced and you sort of made everybody happy. Then, once the talkies started, it then became a situation as to where do you create your characters from? And I believe, and this is my thoughts. I mean, I might not be absolutely right, but I believe they drew from the theater, and that's why you'll see in the beginning there were a lot of song and dance routines, a lot of song and dance movies with the greats like Gene Kelly, Fred Astaire, and all the singing musicals and things, from which I believe a lot was derived, because Hindi cinema came a little later. So they got influenced quite a bit by the song and dance routine. But hang on, we didn't need Hollywood. We had our own song and dance routine, which was like very, very well developed. And that is where the Indian cinema as well drew their characters from. Now, for me, I think that the leading man in Indian cinema has always had the attributes taken from the Ramayana and the Mahabharata, because our heroes have always been Ram. Ram, the person, the deity, I mean the person who obeyed his parents, who honored the promise of his father, even though it wasn't his promise to his stepmother Kekai, but he kept the promise, went into Banvas. There was created the first underdog. As much as Lord Ram is the hero, he also created the underdog in the sense that he had to bear the brunt of somebody else's promise. Now, I feel that Ram was absolutely fine, but as far as the romance business was concerned, a little sort of halka in that department, because I mean, you know, he isn't known as one of the greatest romantic people around. So a little was taken from Krishna, the Lord Krishna, who would play the flute and keep the gopis happy, and the gopis would love him. And there began the mixture of these people, this character that was the leading man who sang songs, who brought out all these aspects, also had the vulnerability of an Arjun. So we based our characters, I believe, in the absolute mold of the classics and of our great works like the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. Of course, there are other things as well, but for now, let's stick to that. Then, I think, and that is how a lot of the characters like Mr. K.L. Saigal and people always sang their own songs, and they were the leading people, and obviously they were always the do-gooders, and they were vulnerable because they were always in a situation where they had to bear the brunt of somebody else's mistake. They always wooed and got the woman. So there was that aspect of it as well that was in conforming to what we were doing. Then came partition. Then came, I think that was one of the most important aspects of how this Hindi cinema hero went through a bit of a transformation, a change. Partition came along, it was horrendous. It was an exodus never seen before in history. It was traumatic, people suffered, people became poor, they lost their properties. It was an absolute human upheaval in its greatest dimension and all its tragedy. From there grew the hero who was the person who would be there for the mother, would look after the family, be the person to go out and earn. And these were the attributes given to the leading man. Over a period of time, that changed as well, because basically the hero is someone who upholds the kind of values that you feel are in society at the time, if there is oppression. So I'll jump across from that, and that was the whole period of the romantic hero sang the songs, got the woman. It was always, then there was a lot of Shakespeare in it as well, because you had the standard comic character who was there for comic relief. You obviously had the bad guy, and that was how the structure of the movies was done. The hero was left to do all the good things. And also, you had another aspect of that where later on it became a point where the first, the lady love would be someone, I mean, because of, I think, Taming of the Shrew and other Shakespearean, there would be, the girl would be a rich girl and he would be a poor guy. It's kind of a reverse Cinderella. And he would woo her. And it would be that the hero is the person who is the working class hero. Also, this change was happening in the 50s in Hollywood with Marlon Brando, who did films like Streetcar Named Desire, where he shatters the dream and the whole business about putting a woman on a pedestal. It's a very, very moving drama. Then he did On the Waterfront, which was also about the underdog who was victim of the system, who comes out from the shackles of the system and fights against the entire injustice of the times. And there began, I mean, we went through a whole period where we had the romantic lead, but I mean, to tell you one thing, that some of the heroes in our movies who have been pure romance, like Rajesh Khanna and some other of them, have always been the greatest stars, because actually love and romance is such a huge aspect of our lives that we always want our leading men to have a bit of that. And the best example of that is Mughal-e-Azam. That's the only time the leading man was allowed to go against the wishes of his parents, was for love. And the epitome of that was in Mughal-e-Azam, where you have Salim going against his father, not just his father, but going against the Emperor Mughal, Emperor Akbar, for his love. And that was accepted. He was the hero. He was vulnerable. He was the man who was doing things for love. Now, a whole chapter began of the rich girl and the poor guy, and how, how he woos the rich girl and brings her down from a pedestal, and Mama's very happy. And that went on until the advent of Mr. Amitabh Bachchan, where the hero still was a Lakshman kind of character, was a Lakhan kind of character, where Ram, like if you look at Diwar, Ram is still Shashi Kapoor Saab. He plays Ram, and in a dark kind of way, Bachchan Saab was playing Lakhan, who was the different child, who was the child that was naughtier, the child who was more playful, which the mother actually kind of had a soft corner for. Not that she didn't love Ram, but had a soft corner. Only in Diwar it began to become much darker, because here you had a Lakhan who was against oppression. He was fighting against injustices. He became the working class hero. He began to represent all that was wrong in the system. And we come to that very, very famous line in Diwar, when he tells, when Bachchan Saab's character tells Shashi Kapoor कि मेरे पास सब कुछ है, ये है, वो है, फलाना है, bank balance है, तुम्हारे पास क्या है? And he says the most profound line, which actually determines a lot of the leading. He says, मेरे पास माँ है. The leading men in India have always had represented that good of Ram, where they have always held their mothers on a pedestal, is what the whole scenario is. It's been changing. I mean, I'm not saying that the hues and the differences are that over a period of time, as society changes, as the new generations come, and there are different kind of issues that have to be dealt with, and you have to have different kind of, you have to have a champion for these kind of issues. However, if you actually analyze it, it is about the underdog coming out, because because by and large in this world, most of the people are usually victims of the system. There are all the things that are wrong, and we all look for a hero. We all look for someone who can represent breaking those shackles, breaking those barriers. It's always work in progress. I think the hero in India has gone through a lot of shades. Today, you see a film like Rais. You have the hero of the film who is actually a gangster, and it is acceptable because he's a Dayavan. He's a Robin Hood. He takes from the rich and gives to the poor. So therefore, and he believes, and he has his principles. Bob Dylan had a beautiful line. He said, to live outside the law, you must be honest. And that is one of the reasons why a lot of the characters who have played gangsters become popular with the people, is because they do good work, supposedly through the thing, but they're never forgiven in the end. In Rais, in all the movies that you see, in the end, the person who is doing bad, although at the time has all the sympathy, like Scarface. I mean, it is just, he's the most horrendous character. He does murders, he does drugs, he does all the things that which your mother wouldn't recommend. But you still have a bit of sympathy for him. Strangely enough, you identify with him, and you also identify with the fact that he cannot live. He must die because he's done such a lot of bad. So the complexion of heroes is, over a period of time, the lines aren't as black and white and demarcated as I suppose they were earlier on. I mean, there are gray areas, and there are areas of diffusion in terms of what is the good guy. Then, of course, with the advent of certain actors, including once again Mr. Bachchan, he would do the comedy, he would do the good guy, he would do the bad guy, he would do everything. But fortunately for me, in a job, the villains never went. We always had a job because there always has to be a counter focus. And even those areas, in the old days, the bad guy used to be a gold smuggler. Then he became a drug smuggler. Today, it's a gray area. He's a white-collar crime. It's blue-collared, or blue or white-collar, whatever you call it, depending on which shirt you're wearing to office. But, that is the kind of crime that's happening now. There's cybercrime. There's international economic crime where, the whole complexion has changed. And yet you have a leading man who represents the fact that he is a person who you want to see on the screen, who fights against evil in whichever form it may be, and comes out winning. The complexion of that evil, or what it's about and how it's changed, is all an area which is, it's work in progress. It's an area which is constantly changing and turning around. But I mean that's what I feel has been the journey of the leading man. It has been hugely exciting and hugely interesting to see how leading men have had to have had a different complexion and a different kind of the belief in leading men has changed through a period of time. I would like to conclude on that because I don't want to tell you that there is one particular kind of person who is the leading man, but I have always believed that the basis of leading men in our country is at the end of the day is Lord Ram. Even in Ram Lakhan, when we did Ram Lakhan, Subhash Ghai used to always say that you are my Lakhan to Anil Kapoor, but he used to tell Jackie that you are my Ram. So you are the epitome of all that is right and all that is good and all that will fight against evil. Thank you very much.